Hey everyone, before we start the video, just want to remind you guys we have a giveaway on the channel. Once we hit 750 subs, we'll be giving out some starter decks and a couple things here or there. So follow along to the journey and let's go hit 750. Hey everyone, today I have Nick Chai with me to talk about a subject that I think many of us can greatly learn from. For those who always wanted to acquire some knowledge about other formats in the game, specifically draft, this is definitely the video for you. And I couldn't think of anyone better, especially from the Chicagoland area, other than my special guest on the channel. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good. And before we start, if you are familiar with how drafting works, feel free to skip to the timestamp below to see what cards to look out for Azurite Sea. So Nick, you could say limited format is probably one of your favorite ways to play this game. What is it about draft or limited format you find exciting?
So the great thing about limited format is, unlike constructed, you don't have to worry about differences in people's expenditure, right? In constructed, you're going to have your $800 decks, you're going to have your $40 decks. But there is a power level to how much money you can put into a deck, right?
Sure.
So it's a little bit more gate kept, whereas limited, you are constrained by how well you build your deck on the fly. Everyone has the same pool, right? If you're talking about draft, seal's a little bit different, but being able to pick the right cards, build a deck on the fly, right, and being able to make it work together is greatly rewarded. So you won't have to worry about people with huge advantages due to how much money they put into their deck. Now, granted, some people are going to get lucky. They're going to pull 4 legendaries out of their 4 packs, right? Yeah. And you're going to be, behind the 8 ball. But it doesn't mean you automatically lose. So that's one of the reasons I like limited. The other reason is it's a fun way to build your collection. Other people, some people like to buy cases right off the bat. Some people like to build their decks via singles. I like to go out and do limited events, both my daughter and myself, right? And enjoy building my collection while getting some entertainment and some value out of being able to play with those cards that day.
Awesome. Yeah, it's especially good for players who aren't really familiar with the game or not really too invested. This is a good way to slowly usher them into their collection, so they'll slowly build it by going to these draft formats and picking out the cards that they really like.
Yeah, and one of the things I think I forgot to mention at the beginning is what a draft format is.
Yeah.
So a draft in Lorcana is everyone starts with 4 packs, right?
Yeah.
You open pack 1, you look through the entire pack, and you take 1 card from it and pass the remaining 11 cards to your left. This goes on until everyone, typically 4 to 8 people, have drafted a total of 12 cards. And once that's done, you go to pack number 2, look through the cards, pick the one that you want, and this time it goes to the right. After 4 rounds of this, you have a 48 card deck. You have to cut down to 40 cards, or you have to have a minimum of 40 cards. You don't have to cut any cards, but it's generally hugely advised to do so. And there are no color restrictions. So unlike Lorcana, where you're constructed, where you're limited to just 2 colors, you can use all 6 colors in your deck, which gives you more opportunities for synergies that may not be prevalent within a constructed format.
Okay. Awesome. Speaking on that, what are some general tips then when you are drafting? Like, are there certain cards or effects that you are looking to prioritize versus, say, a constructed deck that's already built? Yeah,
so when my approach to drafting is, there's 2 different generally accepted formats. You draft to win or you draft for money. Considering drafts are not cheap, right? Typically you're paying for about the price of each pack, right? Yeah. Slightly discounted. It's not a bad strategy to draft those money cards, right? If you get a $20, $30 card, you just paid for your draft and the rest of your deck's free, and whatever pricing you get. Now, certain effects, there's a time-honored acronym from the Magic drafting days called BREAD. You got your bombs, you got your removal, your evasive, your aggro, and your duds.
Okay.
Now, one of the issues with this acronym is it doesn't account for card advantage. Removal is slight card advantage, but in Lorcana, drawing is a key function of getting card advantage. There's too many times, especially in the limited format, where you're going to be in top deck mode. So you're able to get 2-for-1s through extra draws, or through extra removal, or through extra inking. It gives you a card advantage against your opponent. Or discard. There are a couple of discard cards that we'll talk about later, where they'll also give you an advantage. So any ways where you can generate advantage in draft is key to winning.
Okay, simple enough. Draw cards, removal, any type of things that could trade up. That really makes sense. Well, I think we got a general gist of how things work in this format. If you guys enjoyed that quick breakdown by Nick, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. I am trying to reach 750 subs very soon, and I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so on to the main topic here. Azurite Sea is just a few days away. There are some pretty spicy cards in the set. If you have a release event this weekend and you need to open up some cards that could get you there, what are we looking to draft?
All right, so set 6, Azurite Sea, definitely looks very interesting. We're actually going to ignore the legendaries today. One of the reasons being is, if you see a legendary in your pack, especially this early on, you're probably going to draft it. I like to build out my legendary collection that way, get my play set, and a good chunk of the legendaries in this set are playable and are bombs, right? So, you're going to want to draft them anyway just due to their effect. So ignoring that, we'll go into each color and we'll talk about some of the rarities, right? So we'll start with Amber.
Sure.
And a couple of the rare cards that jumped out to me, right, was the very first one was Judy Hopps. She's an inkable 6-drop, right? And inkable is really important. Typically in draft with 40 cards, I prefer to have anywhere from 4 to 8 uninkables. Obviously, you could go higher if you're riskier and it's lower, right? If you go lower to closer to 4, it gives you more room to go up to 7 drops, right? So typically you end up around 5-6 ink, but some of the very powerful cards are in your 7 ink slot, so it's very important to manage your inkable count. So with that being said, Judy Hopps, she's a 6 inkable, 3/6 body with support. Support's very powerful, giving another character your strength while questing, right? She quests for 2 lore, and her ability is at the end of your turn, you can ready chosen character. What's great about it is it's an ability that you can use on the very same turn that you play her. So you don't get a delayed impact. It's similar to ETB, right? Where enter the battlefield effects from other cards, right? So you could quest for something for 3 lore, play her, at the end of the turn, ready that, right? And quest for another 3 lore next turn. And if you keep her alive, she could keep readying your high lore characters.
Nice.
Now, for the commons, uncommons, I actually was a little disappointed with what was offered in the Amber slot, right? One of the things people fail to value in draft are the power of vanilla cards. So those are cards that typically don't have additional effects, but they have decent stats, right? So that's typically your 2 ink, 2/3 bodies, 3 ink, 3/4 bodies, 4 ink, 4/4 bodies, right?
Okay.
Chief Bogle, even though he technically has ability when he gets Singer with Gazelle in, right?
Okay.
He's more of a 4/4 vanilla body similar to Took from last set, right?
Sure.
So amongst that, with that being said, one of the interesting cards I saw out there was Mr. Litwick. He's a 3 inkable, 2/3 body, 1 lore, but his ability is when you play a character, you may ready him, and then you can't quest or challenge with him for the rest of your turn. Okay. So that ability means you could quest with him, play a character, and in limited, you're probably going to be playing characters almost every turn anyway, and he'll be ready. So you can steal 1 lore. It's only a 1 lore body, so it's not going to be that impactful, but it's a way to slowly churn up and build up your lore count while building up your side of the board. Now, one thing to be mindful of, if you use him in conjunction with the new Lilo, the Lilo that you could play at the start of your turn from your discard, when you play that Lilo, that counts as a character coming into play. That will trigger Mr. Litwick's ability, and he cannot quest for the rest of that turn.
Lilo triggers during the set step, right?
During the set phase, right? And so, if you happen to have those 2 cards together, do realize, what that combination means. It basically means Mr. Litwick is a body that can only sing while you're playing Lilo.
Got it. Wow. Okay.
The other common card that I really actually like is Rue. Rue is an inkable 2 cost. It's only a 1/2 body with 1 lore, but its effect is reduce character strength by 2. When you're in limited, a lot of your removal is actually going to be direct challenges. Very rarely are you going to have a lot of removal in hand. There is no board wipes in the set. So the ability to manipulate strength, right, is a very powerful ability. The fact that it's attached to an inkable 2 cost with a 1/2 body is just gravy, right? Just being able to give something -2 and win a trade and keeping your guys alive will make it more easy to win.
Nice. Actually, one of the cards that I know you're not trying to get to the higher rarity ones, but you did mention Lilo already. If you see a Lilo, that's an auto draft.
Yes and no. So I'm actually think that it's a very good card. Going back to card advantage, the fact that you could maintain and keep playing Lilo without sacrificing card advantage is great. The 1/2 body gives it a lot to be desired for, so it makes it easy to remove, right? Because it has to come into play exerted. And similar to how Gale was last set, 1/2 where it bounces back to hand.
Sure.
It can be very annoying, but the 1/2 stat line leaves a lot to be desired.
Got it.
The 2 lore does help. So I would say it is very high up there in auto picking, right? I wouldn't say it's a pack one though.
Right. Awesome. All right, so on to the next color combination we have here is Amethyst. If we're going in order by that, feel free to give us your thoughts.
So Amethyst, I think right away, what I consider probably the best card to draft is Hades. Hades is an uninkable 6 cost, 3/4 body with 3 lore. The uninkable makes it hard to play around, so you want to make sure you have a good inkable count for your deck, so you want to get to him. But his ability makes it worthwhile. His ability is whenever on your opponent's turn, if one of your characters is banished, aside from Hades, you gain 2 lore.
Wow.
Basically, you could quest with your characters, and if your opponent decides to remove them via challenging or via any method, right, you get 2 lore on top of that. You keep Hades in the background, you don't let him get challenged, and if they can't remove him, you're basically going to win the race every time. So once you drop him, you exert the rest of your board to quest, right? And it's going to be hard for your opponent to catch up.
Wow, so he's pretty much like the big bomb and super big threat for this format.
I like to think so. I mean, looking through the cards, the only card that I could see right off the top of my head that could get rid of it is Ambush. And that requires a setup. You have to have a character with 4 strength or more to remove it. And we'll talk about Ambush later on. That's one of the cards I identified in Steel. But the lack of removal in this set makes the abilities so much more important. Characters with passive abilities like Hades will help you win games.
Awesome, yeah, because there's no like really hard removal like Dragonfire or Let It Go in this format.
There is that new 7 cost uninkable card that's basically Dragonfire plus draw card.
Sure.
I can't recall the name of it off the top of my head.
Put it on the screen.
But it's uninkable 7 costs. If your opponent gets up to 7 ink, right, and is able to play that, well, you just tip your cap to them, right?
Right.
You still get 1 turn of using his ability and forcing them to banish it with that ability before they could actually really play it.
Okay.
So in the remaining parts of Amethyst, Genie is a card I really like. It's a rare, uninkable 4 cost, 2/4 evasive, 2 lore, but when you play, draw a card, right? Evasive is so powerful and limited, right? Unless people are ready to counter it. You can get lore for free unless they have their own evasives or ways to remove it. So that being said, Tinkerbell is another common card that I like. It's a 3 cost inkable, 1/3 evasive, 2 lore. It's basically Minnie Mouse Surfer.
Right. And
it being in the common slot is going to be so annoying. So if you are drafting, be ready to deal with evasive. So the 1/3 body, there are a couple things to take care of it. There's a steel character, 2 cost, that gains evasive on turn, 3/2 body.
Sure.
So you want to make sure you have things ready to go to defeat those.
Right. Especially the ones that say during your turn you gain evasive. So I think there's some in this set too, which is nice.
Yep.
But yeah, there's no brawl, guys. Can't rely on that. So you got to think a little bit different outside the format for this draft. But yeah, definitely a force to be reckoned with.
Which leads me to one of the items I actually like in this limited format, Pixie Dust. Uninkable 4 costs. You can exert it, pay 2 ink, right? And you can give a character Challenger +2 and evasive until the start of your turn. So basically give your high lore characters evasive. If your opponents don't have any evasive, you're able to just run away with the game. Or if you need to punch up for an extra 2, you also can give one of your characters +2. The evasive means you might be able to trade and keep your guy alive too.
Okay.
So we're going into Emerald. Emerald, I actually really like. There's quite a few good cards in there. One of the cards I found very interesting is Gogo Tamago. She's a new inkable 2 cost, 2/2, 1 lore body, but it's her ability that makes it very attractive. You could pay an extra 2, and you gain 1 lore for each damage on chosen opposing character. One of the things that limited is, a lot of characters, they may stick around, they might have damage on it, right? So it's a sneaky way to win the game. The other thing I really like is the Megabot. So this is another item. It's uninkable. It's 2 costs. It comes into play Azurite, so you can't use it the same turn you play it.
Okay.
So it requires setup, but it has 2 very key abilities. One, you can banish it to banish chosen item. And like I said, the pixie dust earlier is a great target, so you don't want your opponent being able to give evasive to whichever character they want, right? Or you can banish chosen damage character. So, if you can get 1 damage onto something, use that new mosquito bite where you can put one damage counter on something, right?
Sure.
Megabite can take care of it. So
like a mini Ana.
Yep. It's and there's only a few item removal cards, right? Aside from this, so you can set it up, right, and either bait your opponent's item removal, right, or force them to play around it, which limits their options.
Nice.
Now, back to card advantage. So there's 2 cards in here that I really, 3 cards in Emerald that I really like. 2 of them are discard cards. So you have the Honey, what's her name?
Honey Lemon?
Honey Lemon, thank you. 2 costs, 1/1, 2 lore, inkable, and you pay 2 extra, force your opponent to discard a card, right? So it's basically your Daisy Duck, from a previous set, right? Your Friar Tuck, and being able to hit that on 4 and disrupt your opponent, right, makes it harder for them to get up to 6. Basil's another interesting card. He's a inkable 6 cost, 4/5. He can shift. He quests for 2 lore. But his ability is constant. Every time you put a card into your inkwell, you can pay 1 to force your opponent to discard a card. The fact that he's a 6 cost might mean that his ability might not come into play as often because your opponent might already be top decking, right?
Right.
But if your opponent has any draw cards and you have them on the board, right, you can force them to constantly empty their hand or punish them for drawing. And last but not least,
He's actually, sorry to cut you off, he's surprisingly only an uncommon.
he's an
You
uncommon.
can get those play sets pretty easily.
Yeah, so it's an interesting card. He is shiftable, so there's a invasive shift at 3 where you can shift them on turn. Let's say you shift them on 5, pay 1 ink a card, pay 1, and force your opponent to discard, right?
Right.
Then you have a 4/5 buy with 2 lore, and then there's down a card. It's gonna be harder for them to come back.
Nice.
Another interesting card is Captain Hook. He's a rare 3 inkable 1/4 buy with 2 lore. When he's exerted, opponents' pirates can't quest, and there are a lot of pirates in this set, right? But it's his other ability. When he gets challenged, you get to draw a card. The 4 willpower is what's interesting. At 3 costs, there's very few cards that could punch up for 4.
Right.
So if you could quest, and while they have to drop their 4 drop, right, you can at least steal 2 lore, and if they have to trade in, 2 characters into you, that's 2 cards. Or it'll make it reluctant for them to trade in.
Wow, it's kind of like a Mad Hatter from back in the day.
Mad Hatter, he's not as threatening. He only threatens for 2 lore,
Right.
but very valid point. Mad Hatter was great because he got you 3 lore, and he had to be taken care of. Captain Hook is going to force people to have to make that determination, but because he only hits back for 1, you're not going to get much value out of him in terms of trading.
All right, so moving on to the next color here, we got what, Ruby?
Yeah. So Ruby's interesting. I mean, one of the cards that everyone's seen because it's the next promo for the next set champs is Scar. So super rare, uninkable 5, 4/2 body, 3 lore. But when it comes into play, you have to do 2 damage to one of your characters to do 2 damage to another chosen character.
Okay, so like a Teeth and Vision.
Teeth and Ambitions on the body. Here's the thing. If you're the only player with characters on board, you're going to have to deal 4 damage to your own characters.
Oh, wow, yeah, that's right.
And it's an awful top deck. If you're in a situation where the board's clear and there's the card that you rip off the top, you can't play it cleanly, right?
Okay.
But it is powerful. Removal is very limited in this set. A 3 lore body on 5 is great, right?
Yep.
And that 4 strength is going to help. So he is pretty powerful. I do like Raya more as a card.
Okay.
So Raya is an inkable 4 cost 3/3 with 2 lore. But whenever you put a card into your inkwell, you can ready a character. So quest a character, and then you can ready it, and basically it's a way to churn lore while keeping your characters safe.
Okay.
What I've seen so far from this set, there's enough evasives, especially in purple, right, that it might be a little faster than previous sets, and with the lack of removal, you're gonna have to be a little bit more careful because you're not gonna see some of the trades that normally will happen in the other sets.
Okay.
Which is why it is important to get Longbow. Longbow, I think, is one of the items that could really skew a matchup. So Longbow, it's uninkable 2-cost item. You could pay 2 ink so that you could give a character evasive until the start of your next turn.
Nice.
It does not require exerting it. So you can actually give multiple characters evasive during your turn. So with 2 costs just to start and 2 costs to activate, games can get out of hand quickly with the Longbow if you don't have item removal or you don't have evasives of your own.
Nice.
The other card I like is Aladdin. So this is in the common slot or the uncommon slot. It's 4-cost body, shift 2. Inkable, 1/4, quest for 2, but its ability is it comes into play, gives all your characters 2 strength. So it's like a mini Crikey. And when challenging is the main way of removal in limited, right? Being able to quickly buff up your characters is really key.
Okay.
So it's one that is great to keep in hand. Also 2 lore bodies, so great top deck at the end, right? Where you just need a quest out to win.
Nice.
And so it has multiple uses. Inkable, you can ink it early on in the game.
Okay, cool. On to the next color, we are going to Sapphire now.
So Sapphire, there are actually quite a few cards I like in Sapphire. I had to limit it. But the one card that really jumped out to me was actually a location. Which, considering I normally don't like locations. I did like Rapunzel's Tower last set, right? But this is, I believe it was called the Rescue Rangers Submarine. And it's a 2-cost inkable location, 1 cost to move, 8 willpower. At the start of your turn, if you have a character there, you can put the top of your deck into your inkwell. Exerted, I believe.
Okay.
Why this is key is, one of the things that's lacking in this set is consistent card draw, right? There's very few cards where you can consistently keep drawing if you satisfy a condition. And I think one of it's like either Jasmine or where if you quest at a location, you could draw a card with a pirate.
Yeah, Daisy Duck or something like that.
This, you play a 1-drop or a 2-drop. Turn 3, you play this, has 8 willpower, you move a character there. You're automatically going to be up 1 ink next turn. I don't think there's anything in this set combined that could swing for 8 on turn 3 consistently, right?
Right.
And so, I guess maybe you shift the line. I'll have to think that one through. But in the most part, you're almost always going to get at least 1 extra card out of this. Your opponent's going to have to put themselves at risk by exerting their characters to take out the location, right?
Sure.
And allows you to crack back really easily.
Yeah, a lot of value out of that.
Yep. And if you can keep on the board, right, every turn is on there, that's more card advantage for you.
Okay.
So staying on the card advantage, Tadashi Hamada. So this is an uninkable 3-cost, 2/2, 2 lore, but its ability is on your opponent's turn when it gets banished, you can put the top card of your deck into your inkwell, and you can put Tadashi into your inkwell. So you basically get 2 ink for the price of 1. He quests for 2, so your opponent can't just leave it alone. And unless you're going to suicide Tadashi, right, almost always is going to get banished on your opponent's turn.
Right.
So this is one of those cards where I would put right into my top 5, potential pick 1, pack 1, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's going to ramp and get you up to the powerful cards later on really easily.
Oh, yeah.
So staying with ramp, you also have Pleakley. Pleakley sounds very interesting. It's a 3-cost inkable, 3/4 body. Vanilla, 1 lore, right? But its ability is you can put one of your characters into your inkwell. So it's a way to ramp, take advantage of one of your 1-drops, quest for 1, ink it, right? So ramping earlier, getting to your 5 drops before your opponent does, right? You know, it's going to give you the advantage.
Okay.
The other card I really like is Wasabi. Wasabi is an inkable 4-cost, 3/3 body, 1 lore, but it's what his abilities are. So his first ability is you can banish an item. The item's owner is going to gain 1 lore. Like I said, item removal is limited in this set. There's a few cards that can remove it, but being on a body, right, and a usable body is great. So you can get rid of those longboats, get rid of those pixie dusts, right, or get rid of those megabots.
Okay.
The other ability is on your turn, he also has evasive. So it's 3/3 body. He's going to take care of your Tinkerbells and going to take care of some of the other troublesome evasives too.
Okay.
So it serves double duty. He's also inkable if you need to ink him in a crunch.
Okay.
And then lastly is just Zipper. I just like him. I mean, you know, you got, I think he was a Firefly, right, from Rescue Rangers.
Right, yep.
So, you know, obviously a lot of nostalgia there, right?
Sure.
But he's an inkable 3-cost, 2/2 lore, has ward.
Nice.
The thing that he has is the fact that it's another character with ward with a decent ability. His ability is whenever you put a card into your inkwell, you give chosen character resist +1 until the start of your next turn.
Okay.
As people know, resist is pretty powerful, right? You know, it really changes the math on trades, especially when they have to 2-for-1. They have to, you know, calculate losing 1 strength for each of those attacks, or, you know, losing 1 damage. So being able to constantly stack resist, especially if you combine it with the Rescue Ranger Submarine, and, you know, put 2 resist onto a character, can make it easier to quest out, right? Or to make it difficult for your opponent to challenge.
Okay, cool. I know you left out one in specific because it's incredible and constructed. Sail the Azurite Sea. Do you see yourself also picking this card in the beginning? I mean, you do have to lose a card, but you'll still ink it and you'll still draw a card. Did you take a look into that?
So I did see that one. That one's interesting. It does replace itself with the draw card, right? And you also, you know, it serves as ink. Definitely a card that I would draft. It's not in the duds category for sure, but the fact that you could get 2-for-1 with Tadashi, right? The fact that you get multiple advantages with the Rescue Ranger Submarine, those all spoke volumes to me, right? Where it's like blue, I feel like has a lot of strong cards in this set for draft.
And you want to be dropping characters anyways for the most part as well. All right, cool. So on to the final color here, we have Steel.
Steel. So Steel is where you're gonna hope to get some removal. Obviously, you got that new one, the 4 inkable cost, where your opponent has to choose a character to deal 4 damage to it, right? And it's not one of the ones I was really highlighting, but the one I actually like is Hot Potato.
Okay.
So it's inkable, 3 costs. You could do 2 damage to any character, or you can banish chosen item. It's that flexibility. Again, with the item removal, you're going to want to get rid of those longboats. You're going to want to get rid of those pixie dust, right?
Okay.
Those are just going to be troublesome cards if you leave them on the field too long.
Sure. Very cool.
You have Calhoun as a body, right? 2 costs, uninkable, 3/2, resist +1, 1 lore. But if she challenges a character and banishes a character, you gain 2 lore. So the 3/2 with resist +1 actually makes it a little bit more tricky for opponents, right? You know, like early on, it can get some nice advantage. And the other card I really like is Mr. Big. Mr. Big is an uninkable 4 cost. It's a 1/1 for 3 lore, but he cannot be challenged by any characters with 2 strength or more.
That's spicy.
The majority of cards in this that people are going to be playing are going to have 2 strength or more. So they're going to be hard pressed to deal with Mr. Big, right?
Sure.
Unless they still have a 1-drop or they have Pluto that's damaged, they're going to be hard pressed to take care of.
You could also get rid of that 1-cost character or the 1-strength character and then just drop Mr. Big and then...
Yeah. And so, like, similar to how Raja was in last set, if you have an empty hand, right, you know, it could quest for 2 and then characters with 4 or less can challenge it. Those restrictions on being able to challenge and limit it is actually pretty powerful. Jafar, the legendary, was amazing because it really limited the field on what opponents can do.
Okay.
So back to removal. Ambush is probably a pack 1, pick 1 card. It's a 3 uninkable. You exert a character, you can deal its damage to any other character, right?
Okay. Yep.
Since removal is at a premium, this is a lower cost removal, though it does require also exerting one of your characters. But being able to deal direct damage and, you know, equivalent to whatever your strength is pretty powerful.
Okay.
And then the last card is Pluto. It's an inkable 4 cost. He's a 1/5 body, 1 lore as a bodyguard, but when he's undamaged, he gets 4 strength. Being able to be 4/5, right, with Pluto, and as a bodyguard, really could deal some damage. Hey did a lot of damage last set, right? You know, obviously you could run something into Pluto just to take off the strength, sacrifice a small character, and then finish it off with a bigger character. But if you're able to get enough aggro cards, right, you know, there's that new 3 lore, Caterpillar Clone, and Amethyst.
Yeah, carpet,
the evasives, right? Mr. Big, a lot of 3 lore bodies, and you drop Pluto. It really could just stall enough time for you to, you know, quest out, right? Or follow up with a Simba, or follow up with a Judy Hop, something where you get, you know, quest with your high lore characters and then ready them.
Nice. Is that pretty much the end of your top, I guess, 3 to 5 cards, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cards that were interesting. These are the ones that jumped out to me. I still am doing a little bit more analysis to see which cards I would really want to play. You know, like I said, Mr. Litwick, I did mention, I'm not completely sold on him. He just seemed like an interesting ability, right? But the 1 lore, 2/3 body might not be enough to swing matches.
Amazing. Well, Nick, it's been a pleasure having you on again to share your insights into draft format. I hope everyone else found this helpful. Don't forget to sub, share the video. Let's get to 750 to the moon. And until next time, see you on the next one.